We've been hearing about Vilasa and Bhasa. I think we could describe them as spiritual friends. There were two young men who went off on their spiritual pursuits and then met up again. Through conversing with each other, they seem to have attained self-knowledge. Vasishta continued, thus conversing with each other and inquiring into the nature of the world, they soon attained the supreme wisdom. Hence, O Rama, I tell you that there is no way other than self-knowledge for the cutting asunder of bondage and for crossing this ocean of illusion. To the enlightened person, this ocean of sorrow is like a little puddle. He views the body as a spectator looks at a distant crowd. Hence he is not affected by the pains that the body is subjected to. The existence of the body does not diminish the omnipresence of the self any more than waves diminish the fullness of the ocean. What is the relationship of a swan, a rock, or a piece of wood to the water which surrounds them? Even so, the Supreme Self has no relationship with this world appearance. A falling tree seems to raise waves on the water. Similar is the experience by the Self of the pleasure and pain that appear on the body. We sometimes get the idea that the Self, from the description that's given, that it's inert, it's unresponsive. But it's saying here that it's similar to a tree falling in the water. The pleasure and pain of the body with respect to the self is similar to a tree hitting the water. The question here is one of perspective. If that water is the ocean, it's fair to say that that tree falling on the water makes no difference to it whatsoever. And similarly with the pain and pleasure of the body. If you're centered on your own awareness, and not just your own awareness, but the appreciation or the realization of the infinite nature, the vastness of that awareness, rather than identifying with the body, then the pleasure and pain are not going to be relevant to you, or they're not going to be relevant to the essential awareness. Even as by its proximity to water, wood is reflected in the water, the body is reflected in the self. I think what's being described here is the immediacy. There are certainly sensations, experiences which seem to have an immediacy and an intimacy, and we collect these experiences and we relate them to the notion of a body. I'm not sure we should take any other understanding from this. We need to be careful about somehow thinking of the body as one thing and the self as the other. What these similes are suggesting really is that everything that exists is dependent on the self, but the self is independent of everything else. I think this is the message we need to get from this paragraph. But even as a rock falling in the water does not injure the water, nor is injured by it, even so when the body comes into contact with other material substances, such as wife, children or material objects, there is no injury or pain to anyone. So really, we experience pain, but we can look beyond that pain to the self within which everything arises. It doesn't mean that the pain disappears, but through spiritual practice we can open ourselves up to the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is realizing the vast nature of our essential awareness, which is called the self here. And that gives us a context for reevaluating everything. We have the option of focusing on the pain, getting caught up in it, feeding it, making a drama about it. Or we have the option of identifying with that within which the pain arises. It's a tricky thing. It's like I've said before, spiritual practice is like not scratching the itchy spot. And pain, by its very nature, seems to want to suck us into it. It draws our attention to it, it sucks our attention into it. And at the same time, we want to get away from it. This is the essential paradox that we've got. We could say there's an underlying pain, the pain of existence, which fuels our cravings. And our cravings are taking us away from the very thing which can do what the cravings are hoping to do. In other words, give us a sense of completeness, of fulfillment, of satisfaction. Our lives are an essential contradiction, and spiritual practice is about resolving that contradiction, working with that contradiction,